Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Dave Thompson. I'd like to welcome you to our Civil Human Bible study today. I'm a civil human minister, and what that means is that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. And so the way that I'm approaching this Bible study today is that I'm looking at this Bible as a human being and trying to find those teachings that I feel can be taken out and applied to all humans across the board. And secondly, I want to be civil about that. So I want to respect those basic shared human needs that we all have. And you may notice that we're not in the studio today, and we are actually in Bandon, Oregon, and shooting from a parking lot because we have reception and because our car ran out of energy. So we are next to the charge station also. But let's go ahead and jump into the text. It's Matthew chapter 13, actually chapter 12, and starting with verse 33. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." But he answered and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise in the judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and indeed greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and indeed a greater Solomon is here today." So today we're actually talking about an analogy or a metaphor that Jesus uses that is slightly confusing. So there's a bit of history that I'd like to talk about with regard to the Jewish people. And first of all, I want to set it up. What's happening right now, right? The Pharisees are saying that they want a sign. What does that mean? Well, in this time, a lot of prophets would prove their legitimacy or their connection with God by doing something that was something that no other human could do and couldn't be blamed on anybody except for God. So that's what the Pharisees are asking for, which is actually quite ludicrous because Jesus up till this point has been doing all kinds of stuff. And so it really is obvious they're not sincere about it. And so Jesus does not provide them a sign, but in fact, he actually points to this story of Jonah the prophet. And I'd like to explain a little bit about what that is all about. So in the Old Testament, which is the early Jewish history, we got a helicopter going overhead here, so hopefully you can hear me okay. So Jonah was a prophet in the Old Testament, and God told him, "I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to preach to them. They're starting to worship other gods, and I want them to turn back to worship, the one God and the Jewish God." And Jonah decides that he doesn't want to. He doesn't particularly like the city Nineveh, so he actually ends up going the opposite direction because he's kind of angry that God would ask him to go there. And so he goes on this ship, and there's this huge storm that rocks the boat. And all the people on there who are not Jewish, by the way, it's like a ship, a cargo ship, and they're freaking out trying to figure out why there's this storm here. They're all praying to their own individual gods. And then they turn to Jonah and ask, "Do you know anything about this?" And Jonah actually says, "Yeah, I think it's my God actually doing this." And so all of them pray to Jonah's God, and then he tells them, "You got to throw me overboard because you're all going to die if you don't." So Jonah gets thrown overboard. And this big fish, you may have heard it if you come from like Sunday school as a kid, Jonah and the whale. We don't know if it was a whale, but it was a big fish, right? And so this fish swallows Jonah, and he's inside this fish's belly for like 3 days and 3 nights. And eventually this big fish spits him up on the shore of Nineveh. And he goes and preaches to the Ninevites and tells them to turn their lives around and to start following after the ways of peace and of compassion and of love. And they turn, and they actually turn their lives around, and the city themselves tear down all the idolatrous, other foreign gods, statues and idols. And so this whole city makes a huge decision and actually changes their place. So when Jesus speaks to the Pharisees about this sign, they know exactly what he's saying. They know that they've heard this story since the beginning when they were little kids, and these Pharisees are the teachers of these stories. So they know it like the back of their hand. And so Jesus says this kind of weird, ambiguous statement that just like Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of God, the Son of Man, will be in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. This is obviously, for those of you who know what's going to be happening later on down the road, Jesus is talking about the resurrection. He's talking about the sign that he's going to give, demonstrating his divinity, is being able to raise himself from the dead. And so he's essentially telling him, look, I'm not going to give you something right now, but you're going to have to deal with this sign later on. And then he says, you may have noticed that the city of Nineveh will rise up and judge them. And really what this means is Jesus saying, look, they turned around. They heard the story. They remembered what the foundations of this kingdom are: peacemaking, love, brotherly kindness, humility. And they turned around and changed their lives. But you, the Pharisees, are not that way. You're not doing anything. In fact, you're trying to persecute the people who are actually trying to do good. And then he says that this Queen of Sheba, who actually was another person in the Old Testament that they knew about, that Solomon, who was the third king actually in Israel, was super wise. The queen came up from probably Ethiopia and started talking with him and was impressed by his wisdom and ended up changing a lot of her life and making herself a better person as a result of talking with him. And so Jesus points to her, and who's probably not even worshiping the same God as the Jewish people. And he's saying, look, even this person turned around and started to do something better with her life. And you have done nothing except persecute the people who are trying to help the sick and the poor. So this is where Jesus has gone today. And like I said, I'm trying to find those basic human teachings that I feel are really relevant to all people across the board. And the one message that I want to talk about today is this story is really about taking advantage of opportunities that we are given in life to turn our lives around. Right now, we're all going through this COVID situation. We're all wondering what's going to happen with the economy. We're stressed out because our families are present. We're stressed out because we don't know what the future looks like. May I encourage you, this whole Bible study is an opportunity for me to turn my life around and to look at some of the good teachings here and to put them in practice in my life. Might I encourage you also in this time to take the opportunity to think about some of the things in your life and to think about things that you may want to change about your behavior or about what you're going after. And when those times come, when you have those chances, take advantage of them, because they may not come again. And you may regret later on down the road not doing something to make your life better. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you putting up with the sound and the wind and the traffic and all that. We're looking forward to doing some other shows on the road. We'll have some hopefully really cool backdrops to look at. I want to thank you for being a part of this, joining me in this process. And I want to say to you, until tomorrow, noon, live on Facebook, I love you. And I hope you choose to love yourself. It is the only love that we have any control over in this world. And now I invite you to join me as we go about the rest of our day, loving our neighbors the same way. Thank you.